Welcome everyone to our celebration of the 2021 winners of the Ayn Rand Institute's Fountainhead Essay Contest. The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand was first published in 1943. Some 83 years later, it's now sold at least 6.5 million copies, with thousands more copies being sold every year. It's a book of enduring significance, and this is part of the reason why the Ayn Rand Institute sponsors its annual contest about the Fountainhead and has done so since 1986. Actually, it was the first major project that the Institute undertook when it was founded. Now, it's been our tradition for many years to announce the winners by posting them online. However, last year when the pandemic happened, we started a new tradition of having an online ceremony announcing the winners, and it's a tradition we're going to continue because we had so much fun with it. It's really one of our favorite things to do all year. My name is Ben Bayer. I am a fellow and instructor at the Ayn Rand Institute, and I'll start by telling you a little bit about what we're going to be doing tonight. We will announce the winners of the contest at the very end of our broadcast. We're going to start, however, by giving our viewers tonight some background on this contest, on its history with the Institute. We'll then talk a little bit more about what kinds of things we're looking for in these essays and what helped us select the winning essays that we picked for the evening. We're also going to highlight some of the exceptional portions of the essays that we selected for tonight and of our finalists. We may have some time for Q&A, but then we will announce the winners. We're going to announce 5 third-place winners, each of whom will receive $500, 3 second-place winners who will each get $1,000, and 1 grand prize winner who will get $5,000. And we're very excited to find out tonight just who that's going to be. Once all of those winners are announced, the full list of winners, including all the finalists and semifinalists, will be posted to our website. I'll let you know when that's happening. And at that point, everyone will be able to find out and also read the winning essay. I do want to make one disclaimer before we begin tonight, because since we're going to be looking at some of the answers that were submitted for this essay contest, there are definitely going to be some spoilers about the plot, characterization, and theme of the Fountainhead. So if you've not read the book before and you would still like to save yourself for the unique aesthetic experience of reading this book, now's your chance to drop out. Maybe come back in about 45 minutes when we'll be getting to our list of winners, because there's definitely going to be some spoilers and we do not want to spoil it for you. Okay, so what I'd like to do to get things started is to now bring onto the virtual stage the CEO of the Ayn Rand Institute, Mr. Tal Safani. Tal has been the CEO for ARI for about 3 years now. He's led us through quite a lot and is spearheading now the growth of the Institute into a variety of number of different directions. Welcome, Tal.
Thank you, Ben. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'd like to start by just asking you a personal question, Tal, just to warm us up, I think, for this topic tonight. How did the Fountainhead first impact you when you read it?
It had a major impact on me. Unfortunately, I didn't get to read it at a young age. I was turning 40 when I read it. I can just tell you the end of it. When I closed the last page of the Fountainhead, I realized my life will never be the same. What happened after I read the Fountainhead and had the image of Howard Roark and the model of Howard Roark and how he thought about life, how he lived. I quit my job and as a VP in a very big company, started a startup with my brother-in-law. We grew it, we sold it in the Silicon Valley 5 years later. So I attribute to Rand and Howard Roark a lot of my wealth. And ever since I read The Fountainhead, and I've read it several times now, it's been an inspiration for me, and I get something new out of it every time that I read it. So a major impact on my life, and hopefully for many others to come.
I think a lot of people who work for the Institute can tell similar stories to the one that you just told about the difference that the book made to us, and that's why we're here. That's why we're part of this project today. But can you tell us also, Tal, a little bit more about the history of the Fountainhead essay contest and the essay contest projects more generally at the Institute?
Yes, I can say that the Fountainhead Essay Contest is one of the first that we've done since the founding of the Institute back in 1985. So in 1986, we had the first essay contest, and it's been running since. You can see here on the slide that we had over 440,000 entries across all contests, and we now have 3 of them for Anthem, the Fountainhead, and Atlas Shrugged. And I'm proud to say that there are many interested parties and stakeholders who are willing to donate their money towards what you see here, over $2.2 million in prize money over the years. And we will continue to do that over the years, because we see it as one of our core activities and programs in the Institute, distributing the books of Ayn Rand and having more young minds engage with her, I would say, radical ideas.
And there's a related program, isn't there? The Free Books to Teachers program, which we adopted a little bit later as a complement to the essay contest. What can you tell us about that?
Yes. So in 2002, the Institute started a new program after interviewing some of the the teachers and the stakeholders, and we realized that what will help for teachers is to get free books. One of the constraints or obstacles they had is the ability to get the books. So as I mentioned, we started back in 2002. It's been a huge success. We've been growing, and we are now over 4.7 million books that were distributed to over 65,000 teachers. And yeah, it's just been unbelievable to see the level of demand. And I think what the core of this growth and this level of demand over the years is the engagement of young minds and high school level students with those ideas, the way people, the students are reacting to the ideas of Anthem, the heroic manifestation of individualism in the Fountainhead, and then really understanding a much wider scope, political scope, that is presented in Atlas Shrugged over the years have just triggered so many amazing discussions and the right type of questions to ask in your high school years. So I believe we're doing a lot of good by creating those discussions inside the classrooms, supporting teachers with teaching materials and the free books that we're sending. And again, the outcome of all of this is the essay contest that has been growing. And I would say the thing we're most proud of is the quality of the essays that we're getting at the highest levels. When we have to choose the winners, it's a very tough thing every year to really select the best of the best. And it's just inspiring to see the level and the quality of thinking and the quality of writing at such young ages, and just to show us how much potential there is to deal with the deepest ideas of philosophy and how to live life. And so this is very inspiring to all of us.
So I think you said a fair amount now about why this program is so important to the Institute. Did you want to share any more about our plans for growing it in the future, or for growing related program?
Yeah, so this last year, or actually back in 2020, now we're getting closer to 2022, but we came out with ebooks for all of those books that we are offering. We started offering We the Living again, which is another novel by Ayn Rand. And the demand for it has grown dramatically. And when COVID hit, it was a great solution for many virtual environments. So we've been seeing exponential growth, and we're planning to continue and invest in introducing Ayn Rand to as many students as we can. We are starting as early as 7th, 8th grade with Anthem, going all the way to senior years, and a lot of college students. So we love the fact that it's growing, and it's growing globally. You'll see later on how many countries are involved in this. And it's just great to see that for an author who wrote books back in the 40s and 50s, we see it's still growing in demand. And I think it's just the power of those ideas that live with us. And Ayn Rand as a philosopher, contemporary philosopher, I think you'll see that over the years, the need for her ideas will just grow and grow. So we're very excited about that. That's the core of our mission. And I'm happy to say that there are hundreds and hundreds of individuals out there like me who have been influenced by Rand's ideas. And then later on in life, when you accumulate wealth, you get so much joy in giving some other younger people the opportunity to go through the same experience.
Great, thank you, Tal. We're going to bring you back at the end of the broadcast tonight to you get to be the one to tell everybody who won first prize. So
I have the envelope right here, so I'm not going to open it till you tell me to.
Great. We will see you later tonight. Thank you. In the meantime, I'd like to bring on to the virtual stage my colleague, Mike Mazza, who's a junior fellow at the Ayn Rand Institute. Mike and I together are going to first be sharing some more resources about related programs that the Institute sponsors. Then we're going to get to talking about these essays that we got from students. So Mike, Tal just mentioned a couple of programs, the essay contest program and the Books for Teachers program. Let's give everyone some more information about that.
Sure. And I'm excited to be here, Ben. Thanks for inviting me.
So what can you tell them about teachers?
Sure. Well, we already mentioned the Books for Teachers. If you go to aynrand.org/free novels, teachers can request classroom sets of all 4 novels: Anthem, Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, and now I think this is our first year offering We the Living, which is really exciting. And if you are a teacher who is using these books in your classroom, you can request one of our in-house experts comes and gives you a live talk to your class. Someone can come and tell you about Ayn Rand, her life, her ideas, her novel, and you can answer questions from your students. If you follow the link in the slide, you'll be able to fill out a form to make that request. We also have some Fountainhead specific resources. On YouTube, there's a discussion series, I believe led by you, Ben, from a few years ago.
Co-taught that one with Keith Lockett.
Co-taught, yes, with Keith Lockett. On YouTube, you can follow the links in the slide. They'll take you to the discussion sections and the Fountainhead course. There's also resources for students can request books by Ayn Rand to be sent to them directly. These are free books, Atlas Shrugged, some of her nonfiction, and you can also, if you request Atlas Shrugged, you can participate in the Atlas Shrugged essay contest, which has a $10,000 grand prize, very generous. We also have some resources about Objectivism. There's an annual student conference, Ayn Rand Con Student Conference, aynrandcon.org. You can attend that. That's a live conference this year. I believe we're returning to live conferences. Yes. Last year was remote, but we're returning live this year. And for the first time, we're running a reading group for students. Again, follow the link in the slide. This is going to be run by some of our junior fellows here at ARI. It's on the virtue of selfishness. This is a reading group geared towards students. Finally, we have the Ayn Rand University app, which is a resource with hundreds of hours of lectures on Objectivism. You can download the app on the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, and listen to, watch lectures on Ayn Rand's thought and related issues. And finally, we have the Objectivist Academic Center, which is live classes, university-style classes. You meet live with instructors and discussion sections once or twice a week, depending on which class you're enrolled in. This goes year round. Our semesters start in October. They finish in September. We have a 2-year undergraduate program where students learn about objectivism and philosophy in general. And there's also a writing component to that class. It's an excellent program that both Ben and I teach in.
So you mentioned a couple of times a word that perhaps some people in our audience are unfamiliar with, that if you get this ARU app, you learn about the philosophy of objectivism. And you mentioned the Objectivist
That's
Academic
right.
Center. Yeah, it turns out there's a whole philosophic worldview behind Ayn Rand's novels, which if you read The Fountainhead, you might not have quite yet picked up on. That's one of the reasons why we mentioned Atlas Shrugged as a next possible thing you might read and then enter the contest for. That's where you really get a full view of the whole systematic, interconnected set of ideas that Ayn Rand argued for. And we'll say more about that, I think, at the end. But yeah, I want to just also say a word of thanks to everybody who participated in this contest, even if you're not one of the finalists and if you're not attending with us tonight. There were many of you, and you're the ones that we're interested in reaching with this contest. We want to thank the teachers who encourage their students to participate in this contest. Many of the entrants come from teachers who've gotten the free books from us, who'd like to give their students the opportunity to win this contest. And also to the network of graders. This year, we've been, I think, relying on volunteers to grade the many hundreds or thousands sometimes of essays that come in. They're really critical to helping this contest run effectively. Tal mentioned that there are financial sponsors to the contest. There's also those people who contribute their time. But we would be remiss if we didn't extend special thanks to the donors and to their support, for the support that made this contest, along with all of our other educational programs, possible. So thank you very much, donors, who hopefully some of you are watching tonight. You're going to soon see what your money made possible. So we should now turn to the contest results and the essays themselves. And Mike, I think you have some stats you'd like to share with our audience on what kind of numbers we got on this year's essays.
Yes. This year we had entrants from 21 countries, amongst which are Azerbaijan, the Bahamas, Belgium, Canada, China, Cuba. We had entrants from Mexico. We had entrants from Nepal, Nigeria, Uganda, and the United Kingdom, and of course the United States, amongst several other countries. A full list of the winners will be posted after the event at aynrand.org/contests. And all participants will be notified by email after the event. As far as the ages and grade levels of the entrants, we had 119 11th grade students send us entries, 315 12th grade students, and 8 students who were not in 11th or 12th grade, but were 13 or over. So some ambitious younger students entered as well.
And we'll now say a word about the standards that we use. Tal mentioned earlier in the broadcast that one of the things that makes us happiest is the quality of the essays that we get from students. And we're going to be talking about the top 9 essays tonight, but there's a much longer list of semifinalists, which you'll see when we post it on our website at the end of the night. And I think that this list of standards applies to them too. So we're always looking for essays that have an exceptionally clear style. High school students can write well when they want to, it turns out, and you'll see some examples of that tonight. Also, not just writing, but logical organization. Does the student see how the different pieces of their essay fit together? Are they answering all the important parts of the question, showing how they interconnect with each other? Is the question really on topic? Is it addressing the question directly? Are they really tackling the substantive issues that it's raising? And when they're writing about the novel itself, The Fountainhead, like all of Ayn Rand's fiction, is a novel of ideas, but it's a novel of ideas as illustrated and concretized in the events and the decisions made by concrete characters. And so we're looking for essays which really interrelate those two things, the ideas and the actual concrete story. We also are looking to see that students actually understand both of those things, that they have an idea of what Ayn Rand is trying to say, whether they agree with it or not. They realize that she has a distinctive worldview that's being expressed and illustrated in these and dramatized in these epic stories. So let's see how the students lived up to these standards. And there were 3 prompts this year. There were 3 types of 3 questions that students could have written in response to. We're going to share with you what those questions were, and then we're going to look at some of the excerpts from the answers that students gave. So what was our first prompt, Mike?
So our first prompt asks students to relate the Fountainhead to situations in their own lives. I'll just read the prompt for everyone. Describe a situation in your own life when you faced a conflict between doing what you truly thought would advance your own goals in life and doing what was approved by society. What do you think Rourke would decide to do in such a situation? What would Keating decide? Explain your answers by citing scenes from the Fountainhead. What decision did you make, and how would you compare it to Rourke's and Keating's likely decision?
So we've got, I think, 1, 2, 3 students among the finalists who we'd like to share excerpts from, who wrote on this topic. And the first one, I'm gonna, please forgive me if I don't pronounce this name correctly, but the first excerpt we'd like to show is from Pongzipak Widlikit from Shrewsbury International School in Bangkok, Thailand. And he tells a story about a situation he was in where he had to make a decision quite like Rourke's. And remember the details of this story, because they're going to contrast very interestingly with another story from another student's essay that we'll see shortly. So Pongzipak writes, "This familial warmth penetrates into the soul, indoctrinating each of us that the greatest virtue of man is to take the foulest crimes upon his soul for the sake of his brothers." That's a quote from the book. "To sacrifice oneself for the family. And thus, at the dining table of the annual Lunar Eclipse Festival, an event in which all descendants of my great-grandfather participated, my parents coerced me to declare that I would make the family proud. I would become a doctor." At the dinner, and then skipping a little bit toward the end of the essay, he tells us how this story turned out. "At the dinner table on my 15th birthday, I expressed my will to change my educational path, to strive to learn in the fields of social sciences. As I sat down next to my grandparents, my father, my mother, my uncles, and my aunts, I felt immune to their criticism, their blank warning that the path I am walking will lead to failure and societal rejection. I imagine that the feeling that I had then is reminiscent of the ones Rourke felt in the opening scene." Well, Pongzipak, I hope your family is watching tonight, because you were a finalist in this essay contest and you have something to show for your reading of this book, and including for the decision that you made in that kind of case. And I think you're right that this is the kind of decision that Rourke would have made. Rourke isn't interested in listening to what his family tells him about what kind of career choice he's going to make. He doesn't have a family, but he's also not interested in listening to what conventional social standards tell him is the right way to do his architecture, and for the kinds of reasons that you highlight here. But here we have there's another essay that we have that came in as one of the finalists. And Mike, why don't you share the slightly different take on the example here?
Yeah, so Kelly Bowie, it's my attempt. I hope I got that right. From Orange High School in Garden Grove, California, has a story to share also about possibly becoming a doctor. She had, here's a passage from her essay. "I had great aspirations of becoming a doctor because I was influenced by past medical afflictions that pushed me to research a cure for these conditions for myself and for others. I also applied to colleges farther away from home, so I would be able to be independent and grow as a person. However, my parents almost demanded that I go to college closer to home and to take a less arduous career, even when it was something that I've told them I wanted to do since I was a child." Later in her essay, she writes, I'm at a point in life where I'm reaching adulthood. I will have to begin making my own decisions if I do not want to be dependent on my parents for the rest of my life. This is why I made the choice first to attend the colleges that I applied to and wanted to attend. Once accepted, I will choose classes that pertain to my career choice of working in the medical field. I would do so because I find a calling to it, not because of any outside influences from others. My decision will be like Rourke's. Even if people dissuade me from pursuing medicine, I will still pursue it because I will be happy, even if the work is taxing. It's an interesting contrast to the previous essay because Pongzipak was feeling pressure to become a doctor, Kelly against becoming a doctor. And yeah, I agree, Kelly, that this is a Rourke-like decision. Follow your passion. Don't let anybody dissuade you.
It's interesting because I think one lesson you can take from this contrasting pair of essays is that Rand isn't saying everybody should be X. She's not saying everybody should or shouldn't be a doctor, or that everybody should or shouldn't be an architect like Rourke. She's saying everyone should make an independent choice about about how a particular career best helps them achieve their own personal values, regardless of what other people think. So I'm glad we were able to pair those two examples with each other. We have one more, actually we have two more from this prompt. And one is still from Kelly. And we wanted to add this excerpt from Kelly in part because it helps explain why she thinks Rourke made the decision that he made to become the kind of architect that he became. And I presume it in parallel also helped explain why she made the decision that she did. So in this passage, she writes, even if Rourke hypothetically never did achieve success, he would still pursue architecture. He states that on average, he would have, quote, 60 years to live, with most of that time spent working. If he found no joy in working, then he would be condemning himself to 60 years of torture, unquote. As one can see throughout the novel, Rourke subjects himself to menial jobs and small commissions at the worst of his career, as well as days of work with little sleep, in which he would wake up on his desk to start work again. One may think this is torture, and surely it would be so if he loathed his job. But the difference is that Rourke willingly puts himself through these hardships because he is completely consumed by his devotion to architecture. He does not care whether he's paid or not for his buildings, only that they are built by his exact design. Well, Kelly, if you're planning on entering the medical field, I suspect you may have some long days and nights ahead of you with little sleep. And I really hope that you're as passionate about that career as Rourke was about architecture. We have one more from prompt one.
So let's go to the excerpt from Eli Kashuba from Priestville School, Saskatchewan, Canada. Eli answers the question with from an excerpt from his essay. It is much easier in life to follow in the footsteps of Keating than Rourke. When I had to choose between my love for music and my social status, I sadly chose the path that Peter Keating would have chosen and dropped out of band. I was so insecure with myself that I, exactly as Keating did, allowed the opinions of my peers to dictate my decisions. When I first joined band, I was going through some very rough times in my life, and music was a sort of therapy for me. I fell in love with it, and I honestly believe had I continued to be dedicated as I was, stuck with it, music could have taken me far in life. Nonetheless, I have to look back at this monumental point in my life and use my mistake as a learning experience. Playing the clarinet taught me valuable life lessons that I apply to everything I do today. Music taught me perseverance, dedication, cooperation, most importantly, how to be happy. I have learned from Rourke that in the future, when I face similar situations, I should not compromise my beliefs or my happiness for others. You only get one shot at life, and spending it seeking the approvals of others will leave you completely unsatisfied.
I found that excerpt very interesting for two reasons. One is that it was answering the question in an indirect way that not everybody might have thought to do, because I think a lot of people would have responded by saying, here's what I did that was like Rourke. But this person answered by saying, here's something that I did that wasn't like Rourke, and I sort of regret it. And talks about how he learns a lesson from this for how he'd like to be more like Rourke in the future. The second reason that this is interesting to me is because when I was in high school, I was also in band and played clarinet for the opposite reasons that he had. That is, I didn't do it because I loved it. I did it because everybody else was in band and someone told me I should be in band. And so like Eli, I regret my decision. And so here's another case where you can make the wrong decision, the same decision, but for very different reasons. And I think that's consistent with.
That's funny, Ben. I was in band as well, also clarinet, and I quit because I hated it. And as soon as I realized I hated it and I could quit, I did. So,
well, we have got the full range of possibilities.
Range
there.
of possibles.
Excellent. So let's move on to prompt 2, which was a question that asked students to reflect on one of the deeper points, one of the deeper philosophical aspects of the ideas of the Fountainhead. And here goes. Prompt 2 asks, in an editorial defending Rourke, Juan writes, "It is precisely the self that cannot and must not be sacrificed. It is the unsacrificed self that we must respect in man above all. What does the Fountainhead have to say about what it means to actually have a self? Illustrate by giving examples of major and minor characters who are described in ways that suggest that they either have or lack a self." So what was our first response to this one that we want to share, Mike?
Our first excerpt is from Cabri Riggs, Southmore High School, Moore, Oklahoma. Cabri writes, throughout the novel, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, it is conveyed that to actually have a self, a person must only live for themselves. Their intentions and purpose can only come from within. They cannot come from other people or objects. To not have a self is to live for the approval of others, to use only the ideas of others, or to be dependent on others. Although not a main character in the novel, Catherine Halsey is a great example of how The Fountainhead explains the difference between having and lacking a self. Catherine, the niece of Ellsworth Toohey and the love interest of Peter Keating, starts off the novel expressing excitement and admiration for both her uncle Toohey and Keating through their achievements. However, she never truly has any goals or dreams of her own, besides her brief desire to go to college, which she loses after her lack of using her own thoughts and mind let her uncle persuade her into not pursuing. By the end of the novel, Catherine finds herself in the job and lifestyle of a person who does not only live through her own ambition and dreams, but one where she is able to have power and control over those deemed as less fortunate and weak in society. She lives her life as what her uncle wanted her to be rather than what she wanted to be. Although she is a young girl who has the innocence that might make it seem like she can be saved from losing herself, due to her own lack of determination and opinions, she loses herself. And we thought that was a nice abstract statement of the basic answer and a very well-chosen example to illustrate that.
And a clever example too, because Catherine is one of the minor characters of the Fountainhead, and not a major character like Rourke or Dominique or Wyand or Keating or Toohey, and yet the same themes are playing out even in the minor characters. And in this case, I think in an interesting way, because Catherine is someone who goes through interesting development or de-development, if you want, over the course of the novel. She starts out having more of a self than she ends up with. Unfortunately, she loses her sense of self. And the other thing I wanted to add is that this, the answer to this second prompt, I hope everyone sees, is related to the first prompt we talked about, when we were asking students for examples in their life where they did something like Rourke. This is part of how Rand understands those kinds of decisions, that when someone is choosing their own values, their own passions and interests, not because of what other people tell them, but because they themselves see what it contributes to their life. Part of what makes Rourke Rourke there is that Rourke is defining his own self as opposed to having his life pushed around by other people. And keep that in mind, because we'll have some reflections on it when we look at after we look at the rest of these prompt 2 answers. Let's go to another excerpt in response to prompt 2. And this one comes from Victoria Stopp from White Oaks Secondary School in Oakville, Ontario, in Canada. And here's what Victoria had to say, this time talking more about how these ideas apply to Rourke. She writes, the characteristics that differentiate Rourke from the other characters are his integrity and independence of thought. He does not look to others to tell him what to think or do, nor does he surrender his own convictions despite the unwillingness of society to accept them. Rourke is committed to embracing the things in his life that bring him happiness, and to do this, he must create standards for himself. Through the dialogue between him and the dean in one of the scenes, Rand reveals that in the future, Rourke will not design buildings based on societal expectations or what others admire and praise. Instead, he will build according to his standards and will not compromise his architectural design style. Thus, his buildings will be logical and original and will not resemble Renaissance villas or Victorian mansions, revealing to readers that he has a self. One thing I thought was really interesting about this answer is that Victoria helps us to see that when Rand talks about having a self, and especially when she's talking about people like Rourke having a self, she's not just portraying people as doing any old thing they want to do, regardless of consequences. That Rourke's decisions, in part, are his and his alone. They're for himself and by himself because he has some of his own standards and principles. And Victoria here mentions some of those principles. She mentions the principles of integrity and independence of thought. And notably, these are also moral principles. So there's a connection here between doing something for yourself and, interestingly, morality, at least in Ayn Rand's view. And that's something we'll say a little bit more about as well later. But we have another one.
So we have another
also from Victoria.
Also from Victoria, about how she sees this applying to Keating. Keating's choice, she writes, to build an identity and thus a life for himself on the basis of other people's opinions is reinforced when Howard Rourke says, what was his aim in life? Greatness in other people's eyes, fame, admiration, envy, all that which comes from others that dictated his convictions, which he did not hold, but he was satisfied that others believed he held them. This remark about Keating reveals that he lives his life with the purpose of pleasing others and winning their approval instead of in pursuit of his own true goals and ideas, simply because they do not align with the standards of society. In this way, he is the exact opposite of Rourke, who is fiercely independent and is not afraid to act on his own judgment. Ultimately, Keating's way of life causes him to sacrifice the things that he wants most in life, such as a marriage to Kathleen Halsey, thereby forcing him to surrender his self and become an empty shell of a man.
One interesting thing there in getting the contrasting example as opposed to Rourke is if Rourke was someone who was acting with a sense of self to build a self and define his own self, well, what does that make Keating? And Victoria makes that quite clear when she says it means that he's surrendering his self. He's becoming an empty shell of a man. That's language that you, at least in our conventional way of thinking, don't often associate with something like one of the antagonists or villains of the novel. Somebody who's surrendering his self. The conventional view is that that's a good thing to do. Well, Ayn Rand has some very unconventional ideas about morality. That's for sure.
And it's notable that Victoria characterized what Keating is doing as sacrificing his self.
Sacrificing the things he wants most in life.
Yes.
So let's also look at the way another of our essay writers characterized and applied these ideas to a different character in the story, and that's the character of Wynand. And just like with Catherine, Wynand is someone who goes through an interesting development over the course of the novel. And this excerpt is taken from an essay by Joey Juan from St. Robert Catholic High School in Markham, Ontario. Again, another Canadian. Joey writes, tragedy befalls Wynand, who in the process of recovering his self abandons his integrity. The banner's content finally aligns with Winans' principles, his belief in the objectivism Rourke symbolizes, but the banner becomes unpopular and almost bankrupt. To save it, Winan abandons his conviction and allows TUI, the union, and the board to control the banner, thinking of, quote, the moment in his bedroom when he had almost pulled a trigger. He knew he was pulling it now as he surrenders. The killing metaphor, comparing the abandonment of his integrity to suicide, compares the self to life. To willingly divide the self is akin to dying, since Winan's life is now dictated people other than him. And you get in that passage again an indication of what Winan is losing through his decision, that it's a kind of suicide, even though he doesn't actually kill himself literally in the story, and that it's a dividing of the self, that part of what he's killing is the self. Again, this is not the way that we usually think of failure or of corruption or of vice in popular ways of thinking about morality. And yet Joey is identifying that abandoning the self is actually abandoning a moral virtue. In this case, Joey mentions the virtue of integrity. I think we have one more from prompt 2, Mike.
I think we wanted to close our discussion of this one with an extended quote from the Fountainhead. Yes. So here's a scene from the Fountainhead that illustrates its view of the self. This is from part 3, chapter 2. And it's a scene between Peter and Dominique. So Peter's speaking. Dominique, you've never said, not once, what you thought, not about anything. You've never expressed a desire, not of any kind. The thing inside you, oh, don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking religion, but there's no other word for it. So I'll say, your soul. Your soul doesn't exist. No will, no meaning. There's no real you anymore. What is the soul? It's you, the thing inside you, the thing that thinks and values and makes decisions. Yes, that's it. And the thing that feels, you've given it up. You're not here, Dominique. You're not alive. Where's your I? Where's yours, Peter? She asked quietly.
Yeah, so I'm actually the one who picked this question for the contest, and this was the passage that I had in mind when I was picking this question, and it turns out nobody among our finalists quoted this one. Maybe others who submitted their essays did, but I think it's an interesting passage because it's the one that the most directly answers the question as to what this thing, the self, actually is. It's the thing inside you that thinks and values and makes decisions. And you have to wonder about when people say that the self should be sacrificed, what is it that they are asking you to sacrifice? Well, it's that. And that's quite a lot to ask. And so when our culture tells us that self-sacrifice is a good thing and that caring about yourself is a bad thing, it's important to keep in mind, at least according to Ayn Rand, that is what they're talking about. And it's important to think about the consequences, the implications of that particular moral view. But let's not end on that note. We've got one last prompt on the topic of humor in the Fountainhead, or at least laughter in the Fountainhead.
So our final prompt was as follows. The novel opens with the line, Howard Rourke laughed. What things does Rourke laugh at in this scene and in other scenes? Give a few examples from the book. Later in a scene with Keating, Toohey reveals that part of his method is to, quote, kill by laughter. What things does Toohey laugh at? Give a few examples. What is different about the things Rourke and Toohey laugh at? Explain how the contrast reflects wider themes in the novel.
Okay, so the next set of excerpts will show, we have actually 3 excerpts from one essay. The essay was good enough to have that many in response to this question, and we really wanted to highlight it. These come from Soo-Yun Chun, who's from Deerfield Academy in Deerfield, Massachusetts. And the first thing that she has to say is something about what Rourke laughs at, some examples of the things that he laughs at throughout the novel. She writes, Rourke knows that he will continue to face various forms of social ostracism, yet, rather than responding with fear, he laughs at such ludicrous practices that make no sense to him. For example, he throws his head back and laughs upon discovering that he was chosen as the worst architect the clients could find. Hence, he is able to humorously brush off hostile criticism that many would find mortifying. While such disapproval would be destructive to those who derive self-worth from popular admiration, it holds little significance to Rourke, for he does not need external validation to know his worth and seek happiness. And so right there at the end of that excerpt, you see here's a connection to this topic and to the previous question about the nature of the self. Part of what having a self gives Rourke is the strength to be able to laugh off the ostracism and the various challenges that he's going to face. They just don't occur to him as being very serious threats because he knows what he wants and why. We have another excerpt from the essay by Soo-yeon.
Yes, this excerpt is on what Toohey laughs at. Soo-yeon writes, Toohey takes his malicious humor to the extreme by laughing at himself, an act of spiritual suicide. Thus, when he declares to Keating that, quote, anything goes, nothing is too serious, close quote, he means those words in their fullest sense. To him, even his own self is a mere laughing matter. Toohey therefore sacrifices his dignity for a meaningless ambition, conquest of others. In fact, Toohey is the ultimate loser in this one-sided battle. Not only does Rourke's absolute greatness remain unaffected, but Toohey also invests his entire life in a pointless, self-destructive pursuit. In short, in seeking to conquer other souls, he ultimately destroys his own.
So we didn't talk too much yet tonight about Toohey, but he's in many ways the antipode to Rourke. He's the one who not only has no self, but who preaches selflessness, and so has no self really to cherish, and therefore has no problem poking fun at it, even humiliating himself. And he is ultimately a kind of seriously tragic character and pathetic in his tragedy. And I think Soo-yeon has put her finger on that issue here. One last excerpt from Soo-yeon. And here, this is actually from closer to the beginning of her essay, but I wanted to leave it as her third because it's a really good abstract summary of what is in common between these two examples. What is it that humor, that laughter is a response to in Rourke, and what kind of thing is it a response to in Toohey, even though they are seemingly laughing at very different kinds of things? And the way that Soo-yeon puts it is, fundamentally, one laughs at something that is incongruous with their worldview to dismiss it as worthless and insignificant. Thus, every individual possesses a unique sense of humor that reflects their personal values and beliefs. In The Fountainhead, the heroic protagonist, Howard Rourke, contrasts sharply with his antithesis, Ellsworth Toohey, in their source of laughter. Rourke, a great individualist whose primary concerns are his work and happiness, laughs to dismiss external factors unworthy of consideration. In contrast, Toohey, driven by his own sense of inadequacy, employs laughter to manufacture a culture of selflessness and mediocrity. The theme of humor, therefore, sheds light on the two characters' respective identities and values. It's just a really excellent paragraph, especially as an opening paragraph, which Soo-yeon goes on to really defend well and illustrate and explain well in the rest of her essay.
I think our next excerpt is from Abbey Grove, from Alfred Almond Jr. Senior High School in Almond, New York. And Abby writes, laughter reveals the nature of different people. It shows what they find worthy of scorn, dismissal, praise, or joy. People use laughter to express themselves and sometimes to exert power and influence. This makes it a great tool in literature. Laughter can give the reader information about characters and be used to convey larger ideas. Ayn Rand uses laughter in The Fountainhead to do this. She uses laughter to show that Rourke is an entirely independent, selfish character. She also uses it to show that Toohey represents mediocrity and selflessness. Selflessness. And we chose this quote because it's a very nice use of the philosophical point in regard to characterization.
Yeah, it's insightful to see that the author is employing this kind of psychological recognition about the source and the nature of laughter in order to convey what different kind of characters these are. And we have one last excerpt, and then we will get to our winners. And that is, this one's from Stephanie Park from Seoul Foreign School in Seoul, South Korea. Stephanie writes, without a central purpose, the individual eventually deems her life as meaningless and engages in acts of self-effacement, becoming a selfless soul that is naturally absorbed into the collective in a helpless attempt to find purpose in the complete absurdity of satisfying the desires of her neighbor, who will have no desires except to satisfy the desires of the next neighbor. Thus, since life itself becomes absurd to the selfless, the only natural response is for them to laugh at everything, even themselves. And one of the things I really liked about this excerpt is it also connects to something we talked about in response to the second prompt, that in Rand's view, at least, what it means to have a self and to build a self and to work for oneself, it doesn't mean to just do whatever you feel like. It doesn't mean to just act on the spur of the moment. It means to adhere to a set of standards and principles that you've chosen for yourself. And part of, I think, what Stephanie is illustrating here is that you really do get a sense of the opposite, a sense of the kind of indiscriminate promiscuity of the nature of the people who laugh at anything because they don't have a self in the way that Rand characterizes. And those are some really important connections to see. So good job, Stephanie. All right, so we have about 10 minutes left in our broadcast. And Mike, we haven't gotten too many questions yet in the super chat on YouTube, but maybe we should at least give people in Zoom a chance to ask any really pressing questions that they have. And if any come in the next minute or two, we wouldn't even have to answer them now, because we could consider answering them maybe at the end. So let me just do this. I'll say, if you have questions about what we've talked about tonight, drop those questions in the super chat or the regular chat, for that matter, in YouTube, or in the question module in Zoom. We'll see if any of those are worth answering, and maybe at the end of the night we will look at them. But I don't think we should wait too long, because we know what everybody came here for. You want to know who won these contests, and let's start to talk about that, Mike. And we will begin with the third place winners. So I have, as I mentioned, I'll have 5 third place winners. Each of these is going to win $500. And our third place winners are Kelly Bowie from Orange High School, Garden Grove, California; Stephanie Park from Seoul Foreign School in South Korea; Joey Zhuang from St. Robert Catholic; Eli Kashuba from Priestville in Saskatchewan; and Victoria Stopp from White Oaks Secondary School in Oakville, Ontario. Congratulations, all of you. We wish you the best with that prize money. And you didn't get the top prize, but to be selected for one of the top 9 out of hundreds is still quite an honor. And so really happy to be able to recognize you tonight. Mike, what about second place?
Our second place winners are Abby Grove from Alfred Almond Junior High School in Almond, New York; Pongzipak Widlikit from Shrewsbury International School, Bangkok, Thailand; and Kabir Riggs, Southmore High School, Moore, Oklahoma. Congratulations. $1,000 is a lot of money. I hope you spend it well.
Yes, congratulations. And so now if you're good at process of elimination, you may already know who the winner is at this point, but we want to make this formal and official. So we've brought Tal, our CEO, back on stage to make the final announcement of first prize. So Tal, and we should, let's hit the drum roll.
Oh, nice. You literally have a drum roll. So I have the winning name here, and the winner of the Fountainhead essay contest for this year is Soo-Yan Chun from Deerfield Academy in Massachusetts. Congratulations.
Yay, Suyan. And if we're lucky, I think we actually have Suyan with us right now. So I'm gonna go right there. So Suyan, I bet you didn't realize you were actually first prize winner. Or maybe you did. We'll try to answer some of these questions to see if she is able to get that working. So one question that we got from YouTube was, how many of those books given to teachers do you think will be read multiple times over multiple classes? We have some evidence about this, don't we, Tal? Because we've had teachers write to us to say precisely that they've had them for years and that they're wearing out, and that they would like to get more copies. And we're usually able to do that, and especially now with these ebooks, we're able to make it even unnecessary. Did you have any more anecdotes along those lines?
Yes, we just earlier, I think it was last week, that we got one of the teachers saying, my books are falling apart, can I get the new set? And we told the teachers, you don't have to wait till it falls apart. And we're fine if some of the teachers say, some of the students are making so many notes so they can go and keep them. And as you mentioned, the ebooks are making it easier as far as fulfillment and delivery of the books, but also everyone gets to keep their own copy in perpetuity. So that's great for us. They can keep the books and reread them as many times as they want. Yeah.
So why don't we move back to the four of us and see if we hear you this time. Say something, Kelly, Suyan, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, excellent, great.
Yes.
Okay.
So were you surprised?
Yeah, I had no idea, actually.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, I wanted to ask you how you first heard about the contest and why you decided to enter.
So my instructor, Nikki, actually reached out to me about this contest, and I've obviously heard of Ayn Rand and her philosophy, but I didn't know a ton about her. And I just read up a little about the Fountainhead, and the book sounded really interesting, and so I just thought I should give it a shot.
Well, we're really glad that you did. I think it makes sense to me that you took first prize, because I think even before we knew you the first prize winner, we were going through these 9 essays trying to pick what would be the best excerpts to show, and we had more from yours than from any of the other essays. So that must mean something. So it sounds like you read this book for the first time because of the contest. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did having to focus on your specific chosen essay contest question, did that change or affect in any way your experience reading it? Were you kind of looking for examples of laughter as you went through the whole thing? And did that have any interesting effects on the experience?
I actually wrote the essay after I read the book. So I chose the prompt after reading the book. I think okay. After I chosen the prompt, I kind of went through the book again, looking for examples and kind of having a laughter or the theme of laughter as a lens through which I could look at different characters, like not just Rourke and Toohey, but also Catherine, also Dominique and Gail Wynand. I think that's really helped me sort of see how Ayn Rand's philosophy is a common thread through all these different characters and how they kind of fit into this larger philosophy, almost like pieces of a puzzle. So I think the prompt has really helped me in sort of seeing how different parts of the story come together.
I'm also curious why you chose the prompt that you did, especially if you read it first and then picked the prompt after reading it. What was it about that question you found especially interesting?
I just found myself kind of drawn to the prompt from the beginning, right when I saw the 3 prompts, partly because I had noticed the theme of laughter, both particularly in the beginning of the book where Howard Rourke starts off by laughing at the edge of a cliff, and toward the end where Toohey explains why he laughs at people. And I've also noticed the theme of laughter in my own life as well, because I'm really passionate about writing. I think writing is for me what architecture might be for Rourke. And when I tell people about how passionate I am for writing, some people kind of laugh about it. And I know they're not coming from a place of scorn, but I think that's just something I've noticed in my own life as well, is how people kind of use laughter, not just toward myself, but also toward other people to kind of almost to like diminish what they have said and kind of brush off their opinions or even like erode their confidence. And so I think both noticing how laughter plays out in the book and also noticing examples of it from my own life made me make that decision for my prompt.
That's a really interesting answer. And if your essay is any indication, I can tell that you have passion about writing in the way that Rourke does about architecture. Now, when I picked this question, I thought I was hoping someone would see the kinds of things that you saw, because I looked at our history of questions and realized no one's ever asked a question about the very first line of the book. And yet it's not just the first line. It's something that connects to all kinds of stuff throughout the rest of the whole novel. And I'm really happy that you picked up on a lot of it. Tal, Mike, did you have anything you wanted to ask Soo-yeon?
I would just like to congratulate you. And, I just want to tell you one thing. It's a statistical thing. Yeah, your chances of winning the Atlas Award are now 10 times higher than what they were before. So if I can encourage you to participate in the $10,000 contest. And so I don't know what you're going to do with the $5,000, but I'm sure you can, make good use of them. So congratulate you. And maybe we can see you as one of the top writers in the Atlas Shrugged essay contest.
Thank you. And I just want to add that like the Fountainhead has had a really big impact on my worldview. I've actually enrolled in an introduction to architecture class this year because I've read the Fountainhead, and Howard Rourke was such an inspiration for me. So
that's great. Mike, did you have anything?
No, just congratulations. And I hope we can read your essay for the Atlas Shrugged contest in a future year.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, maybe one more thing, Ben, is I'm interested as a writer. What did you take from Rand's writing style? Soo-yeon said that you just affected you as a future writer.
I think what I've noticed throughout the story of the Fountainhead is her simplicity in writing and how concise she is and how she focuses a lot on conveying meaning through dialogue rather than like particular physical descriptions. And my personal strength as a writer is, I think, adding description to my writing, sort of making it very metaphorical and figurative. But I think what Rand's writing has made me realize is the power of simplicity and also the power of dialogue to convey deeper messages. So that's something I'll take with me.
Thank you again for joining us, Soo-yeon. I'm especially glad you were able to get your microphone working, because this was a great conversation. I'm so glad we were able to bring you on. Thank you for being willing to come on this broadcast and share some of these thoughts with other people. And I've just been told that your essay is now live on our website. So anyone in the world can now take a look at it. And I'm sure that a lot of people will be doing that pretty soon. So I don't know if you've had this many views of anything you've written before, but you're in the spotlight now. So enjoy it and spend the money well. Thank you so much. So we should start to wrap up. Tal, I think you wanted to send people out with one final thought.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how delighted we are to, you saw from the level of conversation, just how brilliant some of the minds who are engaging with Rand's ideas are. Encourage everyone watching to, especially if you're young and aspiring to really engage with the big questions of life, to read more Ayn Rand. I think all of her novels are so powerful. As Soo-yeon just said, they penetrate deeper levels of life and philosophy in general that very few books do. So yeah, and if anyone wants to learn more about what we do as an institute and as an educational organization, you just check out our website. We have a thriving YouTube presence. The channel is growing exponentially, which is great for us. And there's, I think, as Mike mentioned, hundreds and hundreds of hours of Rand's own lectures, of the founder of the Institute, Dr. Leonard Peikoff, her intellectual heir, and many, many other intellectuals that have been part of the Institute for decades. So thank you. And, we're going to plan to do this this for years and years to come. I'm really excited about this.
And we're actually planning on doing it tomorrow night again, because we have winners from the Anthem essay contest to announce. That will be another one of these webinars, same time, same place, hosted by our colleagues, Aaron Smith and Sam Weaver. And someone just asked, when are the semifinalists posted? The full list of winners has been posted now as well to the contest's website, to aynrand.org/contest, which I'll put up on the screen in a moment. Thanks, Tal, for joining us. Thanks for helping us celebrate this. And we're going to wrap up with a few last announcements now about where our audience can get more information on some of the things that you just mentioned. So, Mike, what can you tell our future contest aspirants?
Well, if you didn't win this year's grand prize, you can still participate in next year's 2022 Fountainhead Essay Contest, provided you still meet the grade level requirements. So no later than 12th grade, I believe, is the cutoff. The applications for the contest are already open at aynrand.org/contest.
Yeah, I think we have the new questions for both the Fountainhead and Anthem up. We don't yet have the new Atlas contest questions up because the deadline for that one just expired, but we'll have them up soon. And yeah, there are other contests, especially we want to remind everyone about Atlas Shrugged. If you've just read the Fountainhead for the first time, reading Atlas Shrugged is the next logical thing to do. And it is the novel that really goes into much greater depth and breadth on the subject of Ayn Rand's whole philosophic worldview, which I think we've only just started to look at the tip of the iceberg of tonight, in which the Fountainhead talks about. And there is, of course, also an essay contest associated with it, as Tal just mentioned, with the top prize of $10,000. So if you would like to get a copy of Atlas Shrugged, for instance, if that's the next book that you'd like to read, we offer free copies to students who are watching tonight. If you go to aynrand.org/free books, there is a way for you to sign up. I think we have a way of putting that address up on screen, the free books address, aynrand.org/free books. If you did this contest, you probably already have the Fountainhead, but you might want to pick up a copy of Atlas Shrugged. And sorry, yeah, the S on the end of that URL on the web was cut off. It's free books, plural. Thanks, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed celebrating the winners tonight. We hope you enjoyed looking at some of the good work that our student authors have been doing, especially getting to talk to our top prize winner, Soo Yun. I had a really great time. I hope you did too. Thanks, Mike, for helping me do this tonight. And
thanks, Ben, for having me.
You're welcome. And like I mentioned, tomorrow night, stay tuned, come to the same place. We will do the same thing all over again, this time for the winners of the Anthem contest. And I think that should be fun as well. Thanks, everyone.